I need to see who is the scoring, not the scoring panel, is your timekeepers, because I like to see who the timekeepers are. And if the teams have already made an agreement as to who those timekeepers are going to be, that are going to be live. For the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. Our timekeeper is Ainsley Burnett.
I'm sorry, is who?
Ainsley Burnett, Your Honor.
Ainsley Burnett. Okay. And is Ainsley, I don't see Ainsley Burnett on here. Is she not on video?
Your Honor, she is. She may be having a technical difficulty. I can see her on my screen, but it appears she is frozen.
Okay. Have the teams discussed who is going to be the designated timekeeper for the trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
And who is that going to be?
Your Honor, just to clarify, are you asking a member from the plaintiff to step into time, or are you asking us to ask the other team to time?
No. So long as I know who's going to time for each team, I'm okay with that. But I'd like to see them on screen when they're doing the timekeeping so that I know what time is being kept.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, I believe we have Ainsley back. She appears slightly unfrozen to me.
Okay, and I do see that Ms. Burnett is there, so thank you for that. And for the defense, who is going to be the timekeeper for the defense?
My name is Madeline Wisniewski, and I will be the timekeeper for the defense.
Thank you, Ms. Wineski. Okay, thank you. Okay. So what I'd like to do at this point is to introduce, I'd like the plaintiff's team to introduce themselves. First the attorneys and then the witnesses. Who is, and who was lead counsel for Holly?
Your Honor, that would be myself, Lily Mastrangelo.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. Go ahead and introduce your team, or have each of them introduce themselves.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Lily Mastrangelo, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Ms. Dakota Weirs, conducting the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt, and today I will be delivering the closing argument.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Olga Rachlenka, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers and directing the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Rolenko. Sorry, that's a hard name to pronounce, Ms. Rolenko. You may proceed. Who is the third attorney?
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Peyton Burnett, and today I will be delivering the opening statement alongside conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst and the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs. At this time, may our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, Ms. Burnett, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Chloe Ells, and I am Dakota Weirs.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mina Odell, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Rima Baisha, and today I am Carson Durst.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. And for the defense, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Cecina Abraha,
And I'll be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you, Ms. Abraha.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Zach Hines. I will be conducting the direct examination of Skylar Weirs. I will be conducting the cross-examination of Carson Durst, and I will also be delivering the closing today.
Thank you, Mr. Hines.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Josie Coster on behalf of the defendant. I will be presenting the opening statement today, as well as conducting the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs and the direct examination of Blake Doncourt. At this time, may our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, Ms. Coster. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Matthew Denfeld, and I will be assuming the role of Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Isabella Marquez, and I will be assuming the role of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Maura Lorden, and I'll be assuming the role of Devin Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. So thank you all for your introductions. Are you ready to proceed at this point?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. So let's go ahead and proceed with opening statements. Ms. Mastrangelo.
Oh, Your Honor, before we begin, the plaintiff has some preliminary matters.
Let's go ahead and do the preliminary matters. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, to begin, just to confirm, does the court and the jury members have a copy of the plaintiff's trial rosters?
We do have a copy of your trial rosters.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission for the stipulated facts to be constructively read into the record?
That need not be done. Both sides have the stipulated facts.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff also asked that exhibits be shown by screen share as they are being authenticated by the witness, but they are not constructively admitted into evidence yet.
And that will be accepted as we are in a virtual world, so that they can be, so a foundation can be laid before they are admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. And furthermore, with that, we ask that exhibits be deemed to be published to the jury upon being admitted into evidence.
They will be done. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff also asked that the timers are able to communicate using the Zoom chat feature to avoid any time discrepancies.
And that is the most efficient way of doing things. So thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo, for bringing that up.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff also requests that in the case that someone is disconnected, that they are able to text another teammate so the situation can be fixed efficiently, but only then can communication by text be used.
That's acceptable to me, and under the rules, it should be fine. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff also asked to reserve any remaining time on closing argument for rebuttal.
It is so reserved.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, one last preliminary matter. Your Honor, the plaintiff requests that the defense be given the same preliminary matters with exception to the rebuttal.
Ms. Abraha, do you have any objection to stipulating to all the preliminary matters as we discussed so far?
No objections, Your Honor.
And Ms. Mastrangelo, are there any other preliminary matters that you wanted to address?
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Abraha, do you have any preliminary matters from a response or the defense's perspective?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense asks that, the defense asks that in order to save time, we don't screen share the exhibits and we assume that everybody has them in front of them.
Screen sharing will be allowed depending on which team wishes to have the screen share performed of the exhibits as needed throughout the trial. So I am going to allow the screen share if the teams would like to do so. It is up to each side to decide how that proceeds. Anything else, Ms. Abraham?
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Mastrangelo, is the plaintiff now ready for their opening?
Yes, Your Honor, but before I proceed, it does seem that our timer is still having connection issues. Do you mind if we wait for a moment and try to have one of our team members get in contact with the timer?
Or our other option, Ms. Burnett, is that we have the defense team's timer do the timing and keep the timing in the chat so that once your timer gets back online, your timer will be aware of where they are. Is that
Yes, Your Honor,
acceptable?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
And I apologize. It was Ms. Wineski was the timekeeper for the defense. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. I mispronounced your name. Wisniewski. Okay. Is that acceptable, Ms. Wisniewski, so that you do the timekeeping and keep the timing in the chat?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I would like, so that we can proceed before your opening. One of the things that I appreciate is when not just the attorney for both attorneys doing their openings. I'd like to see them on video thank you, so that I can see both of you at the same time. And then when we proceed to your directs, I'd like to see the attorney doing the direct, the attorney doing the cross, and the witness all on video when we proceed with the trial. Is that acceptable, Ms. Burnett?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Ms. Coster?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and proceed with opening, Ms. Burnett.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court?
You may proceed.
They kept it, yes, Your Honor. They kept it to themselves to keep it on the market. Your Honor, members of the jury, Lush Fertilizer, the defendant in today's case, created a dangerous, cancer-causing chemical compound called Drufo. They knew it could cause cancer. They hid it, and they sold it anyway. Now, let me tell you a little about the plaintiff in today's case. The life of an 18-year-old girl is supposed to be nothing but excitement, getting ready to move out, start college, and begin their independent lives for the very first time. And it was for Dakota Weirs. Not only would she be going to college, she would be going to Juilliard on a full ride scholarship. But this was all before Dakota Weirs' life came crashing down in front of her. At the age of 18 years old, Dakota began feeling ill. Every day, sicker and sicker and weaker, and she didn't know why. But Lush knew why. At the age of 19 years old, after a full year of pain and suffering, Dakota Weirs is finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a specific type of cancer. How does a perfectly healthy 18-year-old girl develop cancer? We'll show you how. From the ages of 14 to 18 years old, Dakota Weirs worked at a landscaping company where she was regularly in contact with Lush Fertilizer. Throughout the course of today's trial, the plaintiff will present 3 witnesses to you. You will first hear from Dakota Weirs herself, who will testify to the pain and suffering she experiences every day because of this horrible illness. She'll testify to everything her cancer has taken from her and to everything it will continue to take. Finally, she'll testify to the uncertainty she feels looking toward the future. And Ms. Weirs doesn't know if she'll ever get to fulfill her dream of going to Juilliard. In fact, at the age of only 20 years old, Dakota Weirs doesn't know if she still has a future. Next, you will hear from an expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in the field of agricultural chemistry and toxicology, who will testify to her own study on the chemical compound Drufo. The fact that through her research, she found that Drufo causes cancer, specifically in adolescents like Miss Dakota Weirs, that Drufo causes cancer specifically in those who are regularly exposed like Miss Dakota Weirs. She will testify to the fact that someone with the exposure level of Dakota was 10 times more likely to develop not just cancer, but non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Finally, you will hear from Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush Fertilizer, who will testify to telling Lush that she had concerns that Drufo could cause cancer, and they hid it. Testify that she had concerns that Drufo could cause specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and when she told Lush, they swept it under the rug. She'll testify to the fact that Lush knew they only had to take one step. If Lush had baked Drufo as a part of the production process, Drufo would be completely carcinogenic free with no risk of causing cancer. But they didn't. One step, and none of us would be here today. One step, Dakota Weirs would be at Juilliard, not sitting in court today wondering what her tomorrow will look like. We will prove to you today that Lush Fertilizer failed to exercise reasonable care to warn the user of an unreasonable risk of harm. We will also prove to you that Lush Fertilizer directly caused Dakota Weirs damages. We'll prove each and every one of these to you by a preponderance of the evidence, and when we do, we will ask that you hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for their actions and find them negligent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Ms. Abraham, are you? Ms. Coster, I apologize. Ms. Coster, are you ready for your opening?
I am, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Josie Coster, and I, together with my colleagues, represent the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, who's been wrongly accused of purposely neglecting to warn customers of the dangers of its product. Dangers that do not exist. You see, this is a case of classless manipulation. Manipulation by the plaintiff's attorneys of Ms. Weirs. Naturally, in a time of great uncertainty, Ms. Weirs is searching desperately for any explanations to make sense of her suffering. And others see this, particularly Lush's competitors. Taking a hold of Ms. Weirs' fears like the strings of a puppet, Lush's competitors and the attorneys of the plaintiff are manipulating her, disregarding the facts of the case and taking advantage of her pain to damage Lush's reputation and gain an economic advantage in a very competitive industry. A dynamic common in the world of agritech. Ms. Weirs' disease is real. That's certain. But the accusations against Lush are simply not. Lush spent years thoroughly researching, creating, and testing an environmentally friendly fertilizer that decreases the amount of harmful chemicals both the land and the user is exposed to. This fertilizer has dominated the market for a reason, now being used worldwide. Certainly a position that leaves its competitors envious. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the plaintiff will try to convince you that Lush Fertilizer was negligent in releasing its fertilizer in order to get a competitive edge in the industry. To do so, the plaintiff must clearly show that the Drufo and Lush Fertilizer not only generally causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but specifically caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and that Lush did not take the proper precautions to know of and prevent these dangers. However, as the scientific evidence will prove, this is simply not true. Lush Fertilizer underwent intense testing during its development, each time proving its safety. However, even if the plaintiff manages to prove Drufo did cause Ms. Weirs' condition, we will prove that the plaintiff did not take the proper precautions when handling chemicals. As you will hear from Ms. Weirs herself, she continuously failed to wear protective gear while working with various products. As such, Ms. Weirs was recklessly exposed to countless other chemicals and other fertilizers and products while working as a landscaper. Any one of these harsh chemicals likely could have resulted in her condition. To assure you that there's been no negligence on Lush's part, 3 witnesses will be called to the stand. First, you'll hear from Mr. Blake Doncourt. Mr. Doncourt is the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer and a world-renowned environmentalist. He will give insight on the company's thorough testing for Lush Fertilizer, which has determined time and time again that there has been no substantiated concern that the use of Drufo is dangerous in any way. Mr. Doncourt will also show you that Carson Durst, one of the plaintiff's lead witnesses, may have ulterior motives for what she has claimed. Next, you'll hear from Ms. Skylar Weirs, Dakota Weirs' twin sister. Ms. Weirs is an investigative journalist who researched and wrote about the safety of Drufo before her sister's diagnosis. Ms. Weirs is very knowledgeable in the world of modern agritech and will tell you about the prominence of bought and paid for pseudoscientific hit jobs. Finally, you'll hear from Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Williams leads the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer. She'll tell you that Drufo is a revolutionary product that is far better for the planet and for people in general than the old generation of fertilizers. The plaintiff will likely try to confuse you by discussing a ban on Drufo in France, implying that Drufo is dangerous. However, Dr. Williams will show you that this ban is not because of any link to cancer, but because of a blanket directive. It is a ban that could have easily been fought had Lush had the resources at the time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please do not let the opposition manipulate your ruling with their fabrication of facts as they have Ms. Weirs. Do not believe the words coming from the puppeteers' mouths. Do not allow their emotional plea to override their burden today, a burden that they will surely not meet. While Ms. Weirs' disease is unfortunate, the plaintiff will not be able to prove that it was caused by Drufo. At the conclusion of this trial, the defense will ask that you find in favor of our client and put an end to this mess that commercial competition has dragged innocents into. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coster. Is the plaintiff ready to proceed with calling your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Before the plaintiff calls their first witness, I just want to clear up any ambiguities with the timing. Your Honor, was it at your request that the timer show the time cards on the screen? Is
Yes,
that how
it
you would?
is.
Yes, Your Honor, just wanted to clarify. Your Honor,
Unless that's going to be very distracting for the team members. It just helps me keep time.
of course, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff is happy to proceed in any way you see fit or you would prefer.
Then this is how we'll proceed. Thank you. I appreciate the timekeepers showing the time.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this, excuse me.
Yeah, and I'd like to remind everybody, once you call your witness, Ms. Mastrangelo, I also want the defense's attorney on screen as well as the witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff calls its first witness, Ms. Dakota Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, thank you for coming to the stand. Thank you, Ms. Coster, for turning on your video. You may proceed, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Weirs.
Good morning.
Would you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Dakota Weirs.
Why are you here today?
I have non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and I'm here today because I deserve to know that Drufo could cause cancer, and I want to hold Lush accountable for keeping that information from me.
Ms. Weirs, I'm going to begin with some questions about your life before you got cancer. Would you tell the jury about your life while you were still healthy?
It was really normal. I was a member of National Honor Society. I was student body president. I practiced piano a lot, and I had a part-time job at Haven Landscaping.
Did you have any plans for after high school?
I wanted to go to Juilliard more than anything.
Now, Ms. Weirs, I know this may be tough for you, but I now have some questions about your cancer. How long ago did you get sick?
It's been about 2 years now.
What are your symptoms?
When I first got sick, what I noticed was just how tired I was. Like, it was just so unlike me. And I had these horrible chills all the time.
Did you have any other symptoms?
As I got sicker, they just got worse. My lymph nodes were swelling up, not just in my neck, but under my arms. I was losing weight in a really unhealthy way, but my abdomen would swell to almost double its normal size. And I would get these horrible bruises just from brushing up against things on my fingertips, my elbows, my knees, just all over.
Is there anything else, Ms. Pierce?
I think what's been the most shocking to me is just how hard it is to breathe. I don't do a lot anymore, but even the little I do makes it hard to breathe. And I feel like I just have to fight all the time, which is horrible.
Has your cancer affected you in any ways other than physically?
I mean, there's obviously a lot of anxiety coming with this, and it's hard to talk about, but I've definitely struggled with depression a lot.
How has your cancer impacted the rest of your life?
After I got sick, absolutely everything started to fall apart.
How so?
I actually got a full ride scholarship to Juilliard, and I had to give it up because I'm so sick. I think that was the most painful conversation I've ever had to have, because I was so close to having everything I ever wanted, and I had to give that up.
Let's talk a little bit about Juilliard. What did you plan to study there?
I wanted to major in piano, just like Nina Simone did.
What inspired you to start playing piano?
Definitely my grandfather. I used to watch him play when I was little, and he just always looked so happy when he played. And after he passed away, I wanted to stay connected to him, so my parents let me take lessons.
Can you still play now?
No, I tried so hard for so long, but I'm just in too much pain.
How has your cancer affected the rest of your family?
It's been incredibly difficult on us.
How so?
I've been racking my brain for years trying to figure out how to describe what's happened to us. There's a concept in musical theory, it's called a staccato note, and the idea is to play a piece to sound very broken. And that's how I've come to think of my family. Before this, we were just perfectly normal and happy, and now I barely recognize us anymore.
Have any of these gotten any better in the past 2 years?
No, if anything, everything's just gotten worse.
Ms. Spears, I now have some questions about your diagnosis. How long ago were you officially diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
It's been almost exactly a year now.
At the time of your diagnosis, do you know what had caused your cancer?
I had absolutely no idea.
So what led you to believe that there might be a link between Drufo and your non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I was watching the news one day when I learned through a news report that there was a link between Drufo, which is in Lush fertilizer, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What else did you learn from the news story?
I learned that apparently Lush knew about this for years and lied and said it was safe and let me and tons of other people use this product for years.
How did you know that you worked with Lush fertilizer?
The moment I heard this news, I called my boss. I was absolutely freaking out, and he confirmed that I used Lush.
Did you learn anything else from your boss?
He also sent along a picture of the Lush fertilizer label, just trying to do anything to help at that point.
Ms. Ruiz, would you recognize that picture of the Lush fertilizer label if I showed it to you?
Absolutely, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, permission for my co-counsel to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Spears, what are we looking at right here?
This is a copy of the Lush fertilizer label my boss sent to me.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that photo you received?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, the witness has authenticated and identified Exhibit 1 as what has been previously marked as the photo her boss sent to her of the Lush fertilizer label. Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff moves to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 1?
No objections, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may proceed. Exhibit 1 is admitted into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, taking a look at this label, what stands out to you about it?
Stands out to me is that the word warning isn't anywhere on this label.
Do you see anything about safety on this label?
It does say that there are user safety recommendations to wear protective clothing and some kind of mask.
Did you follow these recommendations?
Not all the time, no.
Why didn't you?
I started working at Havens when I was 14, and no one else I worked with followed the recommendations, and it just wasn't enforced very well at my work. So I just did what everyone else did. And I didn't think the product was dangerous in any way. If I had known what it would do to me, I wouldn't have taken the job in the first place.
Why didn't you think this product could be dangerous?
Because it doesn't mention any dangers beyond mild eye irritation. I had no idea it would do this to me.
Ms. Weirs, do you see anything about cancer on this label?
Absolutely not.
Do you see any warning of long-term exposure to this chemical?
No, the word warning isn't even on the label.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. You may stop screen sharing. Ms. Weirs, we've talked about your past and we've talked about your present, but what does your future look like for you now?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Ms. Mastrangelo?
Your Honor, the witness is not speculating, as if allowed to testify, the witness will just testify to a rationally based perception as what her future looks like, as she is the one living her own life with this condition.
Any response, Ms. Coster?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness, Ms. Dakota Weirs, is not able to testify as to what her future will look like, as the future is not known.
I will allow very limited testimony. This is on the border of being speculative. So please renew your objection, Ms. Coster, if this gets very speculative.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
What does your future look like for you now, Ms. Weirs?
I used to love thinking about my future. But because of what Lush did to me, lying that their product was safe, I don't even know if I have one anymore.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. Any cross-examination of this witness, Ms. Coster?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. My name is Josie Coster, and I will be conducting your cross-examination today.
Morning.
Let's begin by discussing your sister, Skylar Weirs. Your relationship with your sister is strained due to financial stress, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
This is establishing the relationship between two witnesses, which is important to this case.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Your Honor, Ms. Weirs' relationship to another witness in this case was not brought up during direct examination, and no point to any bias or any relevance was made during a direct examination.
This is cross-examination, so you may go ahead and proceed in this line of questioning. Objection is overruled. You may proceed, Ms. Coster.
Yes, Your Honor. Your relationship with your sister is strained due to financial stress, correct?
I love Skylar, but we have had a difficult relationship sometimes.
And you stated that this, in large part, is because of your medical bills?
I mean, I can't be 100% sure what's going through her head, but that is what I think.
But if you win this case, you will receive money, correct?
Yes, I will.
Meaning that at least some of your financial stress will be alleviated?
Yes, it would be.
This would in turn lift stress off of your family as a whole, correct?
I mean, it has been stressful, dealing with this, so I think it would.
And yet your sister is still testifying against you?
Yes, she is, unfortunately.
Let's move on now to your handling of Lush fertilizer. Your Honor, I'm now going to refer the witness to what has previously been marked as Exhibit 1, which has already been entered as evidence. Let the record reflect I'm showing the witness a copy of Exhibit 1. Would you like me to screen share this, or do you have a copy in front of you?
Screen sharing would be best. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission to
You may
highlight
proceed.
co-counsel. Thank you. She's pulling it up right now. I apologize, Your Honor. My co-counsel is having some technical difficulties right now.
If the plaintiff would bring up the exhibit that was previously introduced, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you please read the user safety recommendations for me as they're written on the label?
Yes, as with any spray
Objection, Your Honor, cumulative.
What's the relevance of this line of questioning? And hasn't this already been admitted into evidence? Ms. Coster?
It has. I'm simply referencing it to lay foundation for further questions regarding her use of Drufo.
Okay, so you may proceed with this questioning. Overruled.
Thank you. Could you please read the user safety recommendations for me as they're written on the label?
Yes. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment, and users should wash hands before and after use of this product.
Thank you, Ms. Beers. Your boss instructed you to cover your face and skin when handling products, correct?
He did, yes.
And yet you chose not to?
There were times when I did not, like most of the people I worked with.
Instead of the required long sleeves, pants, and gloves when working with fertilizers, you wore shirts and t-shirts, correct?
I did dress for summer a lot because I had no idea that I was working with a dangerous product.
And you also refused to follow your boss's instructions to cover your face when working with chemicals?
There were times where I, like the other people I worked with, didn't follow the instructions.
Let's now discuss other possible origins of your condition. You used several other fertilizers and long chemicals during your time at Haven Landscaping, correct?
I did use a few other fertilizers, yes.
May we bring down this exhibit, Ms. Coster?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed.
And lots of these other fertilizers and chemicals you used at Haven had some sort of warning on the packaging?
Most of them did, yes.
Meaning that at least some of these other fertilizers and chemicals were known to cause various dangers?
I don't know the specific dangers, but I don't believe any of them caused cancer.
Did you check to see if any of these cause cancer?
Objection, Your Honor, this is outside the scope of the witness's statement.
May I rephrase my question, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Anywhere in your testimony, anywhere in your witness statement, does it say that you checked that any of these other chemicals and products that you used caused cancer?
No, I've been primarily concerned with Drufo, which is proven to cause cancer.
And yet your failure to follow protocol with protective covering was not limited to just while you were using Lush fertilizer?
I did use other fertilizers, yes.
Meaning that you failed to wear protective covering while using these other fertilizers and chemicals as well?
There were times when I did not wear all of the protective clothing, yes.
That'll be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coster. Any redirect, Ms. Mastrangelo?
Yes, Your Honor. And Your Honor, before I begin, may I request a time check?
Yes, you may. Could the timekeeper please give us the time?
Your Honor, the plaintiff has 17 minutes and 5 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Ms. Weirs, why didn't you follow these safety recommendations all the time?
When I started working, I was just beginning high school, and I thought the very worst thing I could get from Lush fertilizer was eye irritation. So it just never occurred to me that I had to protect every inch of my skin to basically save my life.
Did anyone else you worked with follow these recommendations?
No, we all thought that the products we were working with were safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. Any very limited recross in this matter, Ms. Coster?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very
Ms. Weirs-
limited.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you stated in your redirect that you didn't believe that you didn't know that Lush caused any sort of cancer, but you did know that other fertilizers had warnings on them, correct?
Other fertilizers did have warnings, yes, but not Lush.
And yet you still use these without protection, correct?
There were times when I did not follow all of the recommendations.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coster. Thank you, Ms. Weirs. You may be excused from the witness stand. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Would the plaintiff like to call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Thank you, Ms. Rolenko. Dr. Rogers, good morning. And Ms. Abraham, will you be crossing this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you for showing on the screen. I appreciate it. Ms. Rolenko, you may proceed.
Your Honor, before I begin, may I ask for a brief time check?
Yes, you may. Timekeeper?
Your Honor, there are 16 minutes and 34 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, and I am a professor at the University of California, Berkeley.
Why are you here today?
I am here to provide my knowledge and extensive research that proves that Drufo causes cancer.
Now, let's discuss your background and qualifications. Would you tell the jury about your educational background?
Of course. I have dual degrees in agriculture, as I have both a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture and chemistry and a PhD in agriculture and entomology.
What is your current occupation?
I currently work as a professor in specifically the horticulture and entomology department at the University of California, Berkeley.
What kinds of classes do you teach there?
I teach several, but my favorite is probably my food crops class, as I grew up on a farm, so that's something I've always felt connected to.
Now, have you conducted any research at Berkeley?
Yes, I conduct research on chemicals and their effects on the human body after prolonged exposure.
What does your current project focus on?
My current project focuses on pesticide toxicology.
Where has your research been utilized?
My research has been used in litigation, on administrative advisory boards, and it has also been used to make safety recommendations to companies regarding the chemicals in their products.
Has any of your research been published?
Yes, my research has been published.
And before you worked at Berkeley, what was your job?
Before my job as a professor, I worked as a research analyst for a multinational chemical company.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, testimony by experts, the plaintiff hereby tenders Dr. Casey Rogers as a qualified expert witness in the fields of agricultural chemistry and pesticide toxicology due to her extensive skill, knowledge, and experience.
Thank you, Ms. Rolenko. Ms. Everhau, do you have any objections to qualifying Dr. Rogers in those fields?
Yes, Your Honor. I have a short body.
You may proceed with a very short voir dire, Ms. Abraham.
Dr. Rogers, are you currently employed as a professor in agriculture and entomology?
I am currently qualified to be a horticulture and entomology professor, yes.
And this is your primary focus at the time?
Yes, I do primarily focus on horticulture and entomology.
However, you have a bachelor's in chemistry and agriculture, correct?
I have a bachelor's in agriculture and chemistry, and I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology.
And isn't entomology the study of insects?
I am not here to testify about my knowledge on insects. I am here to testify more specifically about my knowledge in horticulture, agriculture, and chemistry, as well as pesticide toxicology.
You'd agree
You
with me in
haven't-
saying that you only have an interest in toxicology, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm sorry. You'd agree with me in saying that you only have an interest in toxicology, correct?
I do not only have an interest in pesticide toxicology, I also have interests in horticulture as well as chemistry.
And you don't teach any courses on toxicology, do you?
I teach courses related to fertilizers as I teach courses related to plants.
And you have no degrees that pertain to toxicology?
My current project is on pesticide toxicology, but no, I do not have any degrees specifically in that field.
And so you have no educational background at all in toxicology, correct?
I do have experience with pesticide toxicology, but no, I do not have any formal degrees.
And you've also never testified as an expert before, have you?
My work has been used in litigation, but this is the first time I myself am testifying.
Your Honor, the defense objects to Dr. Casey Rogers being admitted as an expert in horticulture, agriculture, and pesticide toxicology.
I am going to overrule that objection. I'm going to accept the witness as verified by her background and experience. So you may proceed, Ms. Rolenko.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, let's further discuss your research. What did you focus on specifically?
Well, like I said, I've studied several chemicals, but since it was released back in 2003, my research has primarily focused on the chemical Drufo.
What is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent and pesticide found exclusively in lush fertilizer.
And why did you first start researching Drufo?
It is my expert opinion that Drufo was released to the market too quickly without sufficient studies on its safety.
So what did that knowledge make you want to do?
This prompted me to conduct my own research on Drufo to determine whether or not it had any negative effects on the human body.
Let's discuss that further research. How did you conduct your study?
My study was conducted on 3 different groups of people, all of which were exposed to Drufo in varying levels.
Would you tell the jury about the 3 groups?
Of course. My first group was made up of those that were prolongedly exposed to Drufo. This would include those such as farmers and landscaping company laborers. My second group was made up of those that were exposed to Drufo on occasion, such as casual gardeners. And my third group was my control group, which was never throughout the course of my study ever exposed to Drufo.
And what did your study show?
My study showed that those that were exposed to Drufo were more likely to develop cancer types like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What did you learn about the occasional exposure group specifically?
Even those that were just exposed to Drufo every once in a while, they were still 5 times more likely to develop cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What about the prolonged exposure group?
Those in my prolonged exposure group were 10 times more likely to develop cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And in your expert opinion, what does this data suggest?
It is my expert opinion that this would suggest that those that are exposed to Drufo have an exponentially higher risk of developing cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma than the regular person.
Now, let's discuss the person that would fall into that category, Ms. Dakota Weirs. Did you hear her testimony in court earlier today?
Yes, I did.
And did you hear her testify about her job?
Yes, I heard her testify that she worked for a landscaping company.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Yeah, Ms. Rolenko, go ahead and respond.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 803B, this would not be hearsay as this was a statement made in court.
Ms. Abraham, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. This is hearsay because she is testifying as to what another witness had said.
In court. So I'm going to overrule the objection. Dr. Rogers, you may go ahead and testify if you recall the question.
Yes, Your Honor. I heard that she worked for a landscaping company for 4 years.
And did you hear anything about the age at which she was exposed to Drufo?
Yes, she was exposed to Drufo in her adolescence.
Why would that be significant?
From a study that I reviewed, those that are exposed to Drufo, specifically in adolescence, have a higher risk of developing cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what did you hear about the degree of her exposure to Drufo?
She was exposed to Drufo over a prolonged period of time, which would put her in my first study group.
Why would that be important?
This would mean that she was not only because of her adolescent age more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but because of her prolonged exposure, she was 10 times more likely as well.
And Dr. Rogers, what is your expert opinion in this case?
It is my expert opinion that Dakota Weirs was more likely to contract non-Hodgkin lymphoma because of her prolonged exposure as well as her adolescent age.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Rolenko. Any cross-examination, Ms. Abraham?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, are you being paid to be here by the plaintiff?
As I am an expert witness, all expert witnesses are paid to testify.
And let's move on. You gained an interest in Drufo because you believed it was rushed, correct?
It is my expert opinion that Drufo was rushed to the market without sufficient studies on its safety. Yes.
And do you believe there weren't sufficient studies?
Yes, I do.
This led you to conducting your own experiment, correct?
This led me to conduct my own study to determine whether or not Drufo had any harmful effects on the human body.
Did you ever do an analysis of the safety studies conducted by Lush Fertilizer?
No, I did not. I just was aware that at the time, Drufo was known to be carcinogenic to rats, as well as concerns about its safety from what I heard.
And because you never did an analysis of the Lush Fertilizer studies, you assumed that these studies were rushed, correct?
This was from my prior knowledge that it was carcinogenic to rats, as well as from what I learned from other reports.
So you assumed it was rushed?
I was made aware that it possibly could have been rushed.
Okay. And was your study on Drufo ever peer-reviewed?
My study on Drufo has not yet been peer-reviewed.
And was your study ever replicated?
My study has not yet been replicated.
However, having a study peer-reviewed is important to solidify the validity of a study, correct?
I'm still confident in the results of my study, but no, it has not yet been peer-reviewed.
And having a study replicated could remove bias and random chance, correct?
I would not say that I am biased towards Drufo being carcinogenic. I was just explaining the results of my study.
I'm not asking if you were biased. I'm saying that since your study has never been replicated, there could be bias in the study, correct?
It is possible.
Thank you. This study involved people who were exposed to Drufo on numerous levels, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And these different levels were farm laborers, gardeners, and people who didn't do either of these, right?
As well as people that were never exposed to Drufo. Yes, that is my third group.
And these people were all exposed to vastly different environments and situations, correct?
They were put in regular environments that people would be put in everyday scenarios.
Wouldn't you agree that there were a lot of unaccounted for variables in this experiment?
No, I would not. I did not conduct my study on other fertilizers, as my study was on Drufo in particular.
Specifically, the people at the highest rate of risk of exposure were farm laborers, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And farm laborers are generally exposed to much more intense chemicals and environments than gardeners and other people, correct?
Like I said, I was not monitoring those other factors. I was monitoring their exposure to Drufo specifically.
But they are at highest risk and they are experiencing different chemicals, correct?
They were experiencing other chemicals. That is a possibility, yes.
And did these farm laborers only use Lush fertilizer?
No, they were not.
And don't you agree that since they used other products, it's hard to account their health conditions to Drufo?
It is not a coincidence that they developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma after being exposed to Lush fertilizer specifically. If it was another fertilizer that was the problem, they would be here today.
I wasn't asking about other fertilizers. I'm saying because they used other products, it's hard to account their health issues to Drufo, correct?
No, it is not. I am saying that it is not a coincidence as to what happened to them after being exposed to Drufo. It is possible that they were exposed to other fertilizers as part of their jobs.
And could these other fertilizers have led them to receiving health issues?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Ms. Abraham, do you have a response?
We already covered that sorry, that they used other fertilizers and other chemicals, and I'm simply stating that DRUFO was not narrowed down enough.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, as Dr. Rogers has already testified, she did not study the other fertilizers and thus she cannot give an expert opinion related to the safety of those other fertilizers. She can only testify on that with DRUFO.
Dr. Rogers has been qualified as an expert in toxicology as well as these kind of chemicals. So despite the fact that she has not specifically studied this, she can give an expert opinion with regard to it. You may proceed, Dr. Rogers, with your answer. Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Since they used other fertilizers, could these other fertilizers have led to their health issues?
It is possible, but it is highly unlikely they contracted specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma from other fertilizers.
Thank you. Would the risk of exposure be decreased if safety precautions were followed?
Yes.
So the risk of exposure would be decreased if proper hand washing techniques were employed, correct?
Yes.
And the risk of exposure would be decreased if a respirator or an N95 was worn, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And the risk of exposure would also be decreased if protective clothing had been worn, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can I direct your attention to Exhibit 1? Would you like co-counsel to?
Dr. Rogers, you have Exhibit 1 before you.
Your Honor, is it okay if Exhibit 1 is shown on the screen? I do not have it in front of me yet.
Thank you for sharing it.
Dr. Rogers, can you read where it says under user safety recommendations?
I'm sorry, the font is a little small. Could you zoom in a little bit more? Thank you.
Objection, Your Honor, cumulative.
I'll allow the question. You may proceed.
I'm sorry, where would you like me to read again?
Under where it says user safety recommendations.
Of course. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment, PPE. Users should wash hands before and after the use of this product.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Are all the safety precautions that decrease the risk of exposure listed on the Lush Fertilizer logo?
They are listed under the recommendations, yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Dr. Rogers.
And you may stop. Thank you for sharing the screen. Appreciate it. Any further cross-examination of Dr. Rogers, Ms. Abraham?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Rolenko?
Yes, Your Honor, but before I proceed, may I ask for a time check?
Yes. Could we have a time?
Your Honor, there are 11 minutes and 23 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Dr. Rogers, to what extent was your control group effective?
My control group was effective because it provided a variable to compare my other two groups to. Those other two groups were more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma than the control group.
Now, was there a common thread going between all of these groups?
The common thread going between all of these groups were specifically their exposure to DRUFO. It is not a coincidence that they developed a very specific kind of cancer after being exposed to that chemical in particular.
And when you compared those groups to your control group, what were the statistical results?
The statistical results of those groups were that those in my prolonged exposure group were 10 times more likely to develop cancer, and those in my occasional group were 5 times more likely to develop cancer.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Rolenko. Any very brief recross, Ms. Abraham?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Abraham. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for your testimony. You may be excused at this time. Does the plaintiff have a third witness in this matter?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls its final witness, Carson Durst, to the stand.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. And Ms. Durst?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you for being here. You may proceed with your testimony, Ms. Burnett.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Durst. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Carson Durst, and I am the lead product developer at Terrace Greenery.
And what do you do at Terrace?
I'm in charge of our development of lawn enhancement products and fertilizers, but I also make the best office playlists.
And Ms. Durst, why are you here today?
I'm here today because I showed Lush Fertilizer evidence of Drufo causing cancer, and they did nothing about it.
Let's talk a little more about Lush. How are you familiar with Lush Fertilizer?
I was hired by Lush in June of 2003 as an intern in the art research and development team.
And did you maintain a status as an intern throughout the duration of your employment?
No, I was promoted by Lush 3 months after my job as an intern, and I was promoted to a product development engineer.
And through this time, did you continue to work on the research and development team?
Yes, even after I was promoted, I was always working with the research and development team.
And what were you and your team working on throughout the duration of your employment?
When I was hired by Lush, we were testing the safety of our product, Drufo. So I was tasked with researching one of the chemicals found in Drufo, nitrogen phosphorus carbonate.
And would you briefly remind the jury of the significance of Drufo in this case?
Sure. Drufo is a bonding agent found in Lush Fertilizer, and it contributes to most of the company's success.
Ms. Durst, while you were researching this specific compound, did you find anything significant?
Yes, I did. The first red flag I found was a study conducted by the European Foundation.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay to the witness's response to that question.
And is there a response?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness is simply laying foundation to move to enter the exhibit in the future, and she's not testifying to the contents of the exhibit as of now.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This witness is testifying to an exhibit that was done outside of Lush Fertilizer and done by a third party that was not, and it was done by the European Union. So it does not have any reason for being in this case, as it was not done in-house by Lush.
Any further response?
Yes, Your Honor. As the witness is not yet testifying to the contents of this report, it is not an out-of-court statement. She is simply testifying that this document exists to lay foundation in order to move to enter the exhibit.
I'll allow the witness to testify about the exhibit without it being admitted so far, so in order to lay a foundation, if there is one.
Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Durst, would you recognize this document if I presented it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission for counsel to screen share the exhibit marked as Exhibit 3.
Yes, you may.
Ms. Durst, would you identify the document before you?
Sure. This is the study that I found in my research at Lush on this chemical nitrogen phosphorus carbonate, and it was conducted by the European Foundation.
And when did you find this document?
I found this document in June of 2003 while I was an intern.
And is this an accurate representation of that document?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, authentication and identification, the plaintiff now moves to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection to this exhibit now entering into evidence, Mr. Highness?
Yes, Your Honor. I maintain my objection of hearsay.
And any response at this point?
Yes, Your Honor. This would be an exception to hearsay pursuant to Rule 803.16, as some sources in the document are from 2001, making it over 20 years old.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
While this may have been done only 20 years ago, it was done outside of Lush Fertilizers, therefore not done in-house, and it was done by a third party in the European Union. So it is hearsay because it was not done by Lush Fertilizer.
I am going to admit the exhibit for limited purposes as identified by the witness in her reliance on reporting to Lush Fertilizer. So with that consideration that it is being admitted for limited purposes, you may proceed, Ms. Burnett.
Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Durst, what was significant to you about this study?
From this study, I found that nitrogen phosphorus carbonate, which is in Drufo, is carcinogenic, meaning cancer-causing in rats.
And what did you do with this information once you obtained it?
I documented this study in my lab notebook at my time at Lush for my managers to compile into their own reports.
And was this standard practice at Lush?
Yes, it was. All interns were directed to report any findings that were substantial in our lab notebooks. That was protocol.
Ms. Mastrangelo, could you please stop screen sharing? Thank you. And Ms. Durst, do you know if your managers ever reviewed this notebook?
Yes, they did, as I received an email on a secondary study Lush was conducting based on safety concerns that were incredibly similar to the ones I reported.
Would you recognize this email if I presented it to you?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4.
You may.
Ms. Durst, would you please identify Exhibit 4?
Sure. This is the email that I received from Lush Fertilizer and my managers on a secondary study that they plan to conduct.
And is this an accurate representation of that email?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, the plaintiff now moves to enter Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection on the grounds of hearsay.
Any response with regard to that objection, Ms. Burnett?
Yes, Your Honor. This would be an exception to hearsay pursuant to Rule 801 D2, specifically subsection D, statement of a party opponent, specifically an employee of the company.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Very briefly, Mr. Highness.
Your Honor, the witness today did not write this email, and therefore it is an out-of-court statement going for the truth of the matter.
I'll admit this as a document propounded by the defense in this matter. So the exhibit will be admitted into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, what was significant to you about this email?
Essentially, in this email, I learned that Lush was conducting a secondary study on the effects of Drufo in humans based on recent reports that it was carcinogenic.
And did Lush's study ever come to any conclusions?
Yes, all participants in the study, including the research and development team, were invited to a meeting in which we discussed our analysis and conclusion on this study.
Ms. Mastrangelo, would you please stop screen sharing? Thank you. And did you attend this meeting?
Yes, I did. As I was a part of the research and development team, I was invited to this meeting.
And do you know who else was in attendance?
Yes, many of my coworkers who were also on the R&D team, along with many of my upper echelon managers.
And what information did you retain from this meeting?
I learned from this meeting from one of my scientist coworkers that not only can Drufo be carcinogenic, but there is also a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And did your managers ever address this concern?
Yes, they did. One of the managers present at the meeting stated, "Let's keep it in the walls until we figure out what we're doing."
And was this the last you heard about the carcinogenic properties of Drufo?
It was not. A month after the meeting, I received a conclusive report on this secondary study.
And what was this report?
The report was just stated that further analysis would be required to make actual conclusions about the safety of Drufo.
And from your experience working at Lush, did they do further analysis?
They did not. That was the last I heard of Drufo's carcinogenic qualities at Lush.
did the report mention anything about the link between Drufo and cancer?
The only thing it mentioned anything about cancer was that baking Drufo as part of the manufacturing process would eliminate any risk of carcinogens involved.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay, as the witness is responding to something that she overheard them talking about, that Drufo may be non-carcinogenic if it was baked, but it is not in her expertise.
Ms. Burnett?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 801 D2, specifically subsection D, this is statement of a party opponent as she is testifying to a report that was compiled by Lush Fertilizer Incorporated.
Mr. Highness?
Your Honor, once again, she is talking about something that was done out of court and talking about what she may have heard.
Response, Your Honor.
Very briefly.
My apologies, Your Honor. Again, she is not testifying to something that she overheard. She's testifying to the contents of a report she received.
I'm going to allow the question. So, Ms. Durst, you may proceed.
Ms. Durst, would you like me to re-ask the question?
I would not. As I was saying, baking Drufo would eliminate any risk of carcinogens involved.
And from your experience working at Lush, did Lush Fertilizer bake Drufo?
They did not.
Do you know why they didn't bake it?
I learned from Lush that baking Drufo was simply too expensive. Even though they knew it would protect their users from cancer, they still chose not to bake the product to save profits.
Your Honor, objection on speculation.
This borders on speculation, Ms. Burnett. Do you have a response to that?
Your Honor, the question was aimed toward the witness's rationally based perceptions. This would not be speculation, as she did work with the company for multiple years, so she would have some sort of understanding of why they would choose not to make their product safer.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
As Ms. Durst is not in charge of what they do with their products, she cannot say that they knew for a fact and chose not to do it. She does not have their mindset, and she can't think what they're thinking.
I'm going to sustain this objection. Ms. Burnett, please proceed with your next question.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, do you still work at Lush Fertilizer?
I do not. I now work for Terra's Greenery.
And finally, Ms. Durst, I'd like to ask you, from your experience working at Lush Fertilizer and your observations made there, did Lush take every precaution to protect their user?
Absolutely not.
Objection,
Thank you, Your Honor.
This witness does not have, this is speculation, as this witness doesn't have all the information.
Overruled. Any further questions, Ms. Burnett?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Highness, this is your chance to cross-examine this witness.
Yes.
Do you have any cross-examination questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Durst. My name is Zach Highness, and I will be conducting your cross today.
Good morning.
Good morning. First, I would like to direct your attention to your relationship with the Doncourts. Ms. Durst, did you meet Charles Doncourt as a kid?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This is laying foundation for further questioning, and it is going to the credibility of the witness as they have a relationship with Blake Doncourt, who is another witness.
Any response, Ms. Burnett?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 401, in order for a fact to be relevant, it must make some fact in the case more or less probable. And when the defendant met her childhood best friend is not, or when the witness met her childhood best friend is not relevant in today's case.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I think that this lays a foundation, so you may proceed with the question. Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You may proceed. Mhm. Please
Durst,
answer the question, Ms. Dunst.
Could you re-ask the question, please?
Of course. Did you meet Charles Doncourt as a kid?
Yes, we were childhood best friends.
And so you also spent time with him, his family as a kid, correct?
Yes, we were all family friends, and I was very close with them.
And so you knew Blake Doncourt?
I did. He was like a father to me.
And to the best of your knowledge, did any other applicants have this relationship with Mr. Doncourt?
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for speculation.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
I'm simply asking to the best of the witness's knowledge, not anything beyond.
You may proceed and answer the question.
Could you please re-ask the question?
Of course. To the best of your knowledge, did any other applicants for this Lush internship have the same relationship with Blake Doncourt?
I can't testify to other relationships that like Mr. Doncourt had, as I am not sure who he knows and who he doesn't.
But you still said that he was basically a father to you, correct?
He was a father to me, but I don't know if he was a father to other people other than Charles, of course.
Is it safe to assume that some other applicants for it might not have had this same relationship with him?
Again, I can't speculate on that matter, but I can answer the question if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
Well, assuming there were many applicants, probably not all of them had a relationship with Mr. Doncourt.
Thank you. And you knew that if you applied to Lush, Blake would pull some strings for you to get the internship?
That's what Charles said at the time. I don't know if it was true or not, but that's what Charles said.
And so you had an advantage over other applicants because of this relationship and because of what Charles said Blake would do?
I was very qualified for this internship that I applied for. I mean, I graduated with a bachelor's in chemical engineering, but it could be possible that there might have been some, disparity, I guess, between.
So with a yes or no answer, you could have had an advantage over other applicants, correct?
It might have been possible, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to draw your attention to your work at Lush Fertilizer. Ms. Durst, there were complaints about your work at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
After I had reported my conclusions on Lush and its carcinogenic qualities, I had received a lot of pushback through negative performance reviews.
And this caused you to get put on a performance improvement plan?
Yes, I was, due to the negative performance reviews, I was put on this plan.
And were you frustrated about this plan?
I had the skill for my job, and I was still being given these assignments that nobody else wanted to do, and my skills were just being completely undermined.
And you turned to Mr. Doncourt to help you out once again?
I had no choice but to approach the CEO of Lush and talk to him about these concerns, yes.
And when you had the meeting with him, did you get the answer you wanted?
I mean, I had told him that I had received these false performance reviews, and he told me to just solve it on my own, which was preposterous because I didn't know what else to do. That's why I went to him in the first place. So no, I didn't receive the email or the response I wanted.
And did you turn to another company after your conversation with him?
I didn't necessarily turn to another company. I was just concerned about my career because these performance reviews were getting so bad, I could have been fired.
Ms. Durst, could you please respond with simply a yes or no? Did you turn to another company after your conversation with Mr. Doncourt?
I did not turn to another company for support on this matter. I simply looked into applying into other companies as I was potentially being fired.
And you now work for this other company, correct?
Yes, I do. I applied for a job at Terra's and I received that job.
And did you sign a non-compete agreement with Lush Fertilizer?
When I was first recruited by Lush, I did have to sign that agreement.
And did you get sued for breaking it?
I didn't get sued. I believe there was a lawsuit on the contract, but I didn't get sued.
There were still issues that came from it for you breaking it, correct?
I had no idea, and I had completely forgotten about it, but there were some issues that were resolved in court.
And thank you. I'd like to direct your attention to the study that was done on Drufo. Do you currently work for Lush Fertilizer?
Sorry, you were talking a little fast and your audio was cut out. Could you repeat that?
Do you currently work for Lush Fertilizer?
No, I do not. I now work for Terra's.
And did you do the experiments on Drufo yourself?
I was involved in the studies, but it was really a team effort.
And was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma specifically addressed anywhere in the report that you were given?
It was in our data that we found, but it was nowhere in that report.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Any redirect in this matter?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Ms. Durst, would you like to address further those false performance reviews you received?
Yes, I would. I had received these false performance reviews after I had reported this study on Drufo that showed it was carcinogenic, and I had no idea why. I mean, I was doing my job as I was told to.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Any recross in light of that?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the claim rest at this time?
Your Honor, before the plaintiff rests, I would like to ask if Ms. Durst may be excused. Alongside that, I would like to ask and confirm that exhibits 1, 3, and 4 have been entered into evidence.
Those were admitted as requested upon your request. So they have been admitted. And yes, thank you, Ms. Durst, for testifying today. You are excused at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff rests.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and proceed with the defense's case. It's my understanding that Ms. Costner, you will be proceeding.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Mr. Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Doncourt.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt. Please say your name spelling the last for the record.
Blake Doncourt, Doncourt.
I'm going to begin with the direct examination now. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Could you please begin by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I am the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated.
And what has been your experience with Lush Fertilizer?
Since 2000, I worked day and night to grow the company from an unknown producer of fertilizers to one of the largest manufacturer of private and commercial use fertilizers to create vibrant landscaping. We, as an environmentalist, I have done my part to make sure our company leaves a positive impact on the world.
How so?
Well, we direct 10% of our annual profits to charities which work to increase the world's global nitrogen footprint. We've also been instrumental in helping create state and national legislation to help create global awareness about these issues. We've also created our own charities focusing on cleaning up
Objection,
the
Your Honor.
world's most
Narrative.
polluted.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may, Ms. Coster.
Thank you. I asked him to elaborate on his positive impact that he intends to leave on the world, and all of this answers that question.
And I agree, Mr. Doncourt, you may proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. As I was saying, we've also created our own charities to help clean up the most polluted areas of the world's oceans.
So then, why are you here today?
I'm here today to address the false claims that my product, Lush Fertilizer, caused this poor girl's cancer. These could not be further from the truth, as an environmentalist and a safe company, we would never put a dangerous product into the public's hands.
I'd like to direct your attention now to these claims against you and your company. You are aware of what these claims are. Are you aware of what these claims are?
Yes, Lush and I are being falsely accused of ignoring a known carcinogen, Drufo, in our fertilizer.
And did you perform any testing or research on the product before it was put on the market?
Like every product, we did extensive research to determine if there was any potential risk of the product.
Could you please tell us about what you found in this research?
I did not personally do the research, but my toxicology team found that there was nothing linking Drufo to carcinogens. Neither did the EPA. So we were not required by federal or state law to put a warning on our product.
And what did you do with what you found in this research?
Because there was little to no risk with our fertilizer, there was no need under the federal or state law to put a warning on the product. So with no warnings or scientific data to back it, there was no need to put a warning on it.
Did you know anything about any concerns with Drufo itself?
I was never
Objection,
aware
Your
with
Honor,
any.
beg.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Response? Yes. Go
I'm
ahead,
simply
Ms.
laying,
Costner.
I'm laying foundation and asking about his knowledge of Drufo, which is the product under review today. So he is able to testify about what he knows about concerns with Drufo itself.
Ms. Mastrangelo?
Your Honor, the question called for the witness to testify to any and all concern with Drufo, which the witness can, any and all would be a vague question.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I would like you to go ahead and focus your questions to more narrow questions.
Yes,
You
Your
may
Honor.
proceed, Ms. Costner.
Did you know about any concerns with Drufo itself while you were creating the product? About any safety hazards or cancer hazards?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
May I re-ask the question?
Yes.
Rephrase it?
Yes,
What did
go
you
ahead.
know, if anything, about any safety concerns with Drufo itself while you were creating the product concerning cancer?
While creating the product, we had heard of no research to determine that Drufo was dangerous or linked to cancer. We've only heard of a recent study which was neither published nor peer-reviewed, so it cannot truly be a valid study.
And it's come up today that Lush doesn't bake the Drufo and Lush fertilizer. Why not?
It's too expensive of a process for the little risk it alleviates. Again, we found no valid scientific evidence that Drufo is carcinogenic, so there's no need to do it because it's simply overkill.
I'd like to direct your attention now to the claims brought up against you by Carson Durst. What, if anything, do you know about these claims?
Carson is accusing both me and Lush of financial motivation to put a dangerous product in the public's hands.
And what is your relationship to Ms. Durst?
Carson had worked with Lush until she was fired and started working for our biggest competitor, Terria Greenery.
What was Ms. Durst's job at Lush?
She was part of Lush's research and development team, meaning it was her job to look for any dangers or risks so that we could follow up on them.
Could you please tell the court about any such dangers or risks she brought to your attention while at Lush?
While working at Lush, she brought up no dangers to my attention. But once she started working for Terria Greenery, she claims she had let us, the upper management, know about the
Objection, Your
dangers
Honor,
that she
hearsay.
found.
Any response, Ms. Costner?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst has testified today that she brought attention or brought it to his attention in court today.
Ms. Mastrangelo?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow the question overruled. You may proceed, Ms. Costner.
Yes,
Or
Your
actually, Mr. Dunker, you can go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Could you please tell the court about any such dangers or risks she brought to your attention while at Lush?
She brought up no dangers to my attention while working at Lush. She had plenty of opportunities to, and she even had chances to put in reports to go to upper management. But she brought up none until she started working with Terria Greenery, where she claims she did tell upper management, although I've never heard of it.
And what, if anything, did Lush's other researchers report to you in their testing?
They've all reached the opposite conclusion of what Carson's trying to claim.
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for hearsay. Having the witness testify to what people brought to his attention in out-of-court reports would be hearsay.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
I'm asking about the goings-on in his company, which he's the CEO of, and I'm asking him about what he has heard about the product under review today.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, what the witness has heard about with reports with regard to the product is an out-of-court statement that is being used for the truth of the matter asserted, making it hearsay.
I'm going to allow the question as it tends to clarify the procedures within Mr. Doncourt's company. So you may proceed and answer the question, Mr. Doncourt.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
And what, if anything, did Lush's other researchers report to you in their testing?
All of them have reached the opposite conclusion of what Carson's trying to claim.
So what, if anything, do you know about the email Ms. Durst has brought against you today?
I know she's claiming that the research and development reports were carefully crafted as to not damage Lush's image and to make sure there was no paper trail about Drufo's real findings.
And what did you do, if anything, to validate this email?
We've turned over our entire email system to the plaintiff's lawyers, and they found no such email. So there's no way this email can be valid.
Who is Lush's biggest competitor, Mr. Doncourt?
Terrier Greenery.
And where does Carson work now?
Terrier Greenery.
Mr. Doncourt, what is your response to the claims that through your intentional negligence, you would cause harm to other people?
It's an absurd accusation. I am an avowed environmentalist. Had there been any significant, verifiable risk that Drufo was carcinogenic, I would never allowed our company to put it on the market.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any cross-examination, Ms. Mastrangelo?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed. Thank you, Ms. Costner.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt, or good morning, excuse me. I'm going to start by asking you some basic questions about your company. Now, as the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, you're the face of your company, correct?
That is correct.
And your company's reputation is at stake in today's case, isn't that right?
My safe company putting a safe product into the public is at stake.
Your company's financial well-being as well, correct?
Not entirely true, but...
Now, Lush Fertilizer used to be a relatively new company, correct?
It was a small company, as every business has to start small.
Right, and when you were starting small, you had to set your company up using venture capitalists, isn't that right?
Please be more specific what you mean by venture capitalist.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, you stated in your affidavit that your company, being relatively new, needed the aid and the loans, if you will, from venture capitalists to get your company up and running. Isn't that right?
Yes, we've used investors to help build our company like every company.
And now you tend to think of these venture capitalists as vulture capitalists. Isn't that right?
You have to keep them happy. They want money because they put money in.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
The question was answered already, so overruled. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Doncourt, let's move on to your company's, with regard to your company's findings to the safety of Drufo. Now, you testified that there is little to no risk of your consumers using your product, correct?
There is little to no risk of anyone using our product.
Right, and this conclusion was based on studies and tests, correct?
Studies and tests done by Lush in-house as well as by the EPA.
Right, studies conducted in-house, isn't that right?
And the EPA studies.
But now, Mr. Doncourt, some of the only people to confirm Drufo's safety are people who work at Lush, isn't that right?
No, the EPA has confirmed that Drufo is safe, and they do not work for Lush.
But now all these different researchers at Lush comprise most of the people who found Drufo to be safe, correct?
Researchers at Lush do work for me, yes, but the EPA has concluded on their own without Lush intervention that it's a safe.
Now, let's move on to an email you received September 18th of 2003. Now, this email was from Jerry Langley, a product manager at Lush, correct?
I've never received such email.
Well, why don't we take a look at that email? Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 4 as it has been previously admitted into evidence?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, this is the email we are referring to. So now when you direct your attention to the top of the screen, this email is from Jerry Langley, correct?
That is correct.
A product development manager at Lush, correct?
He does work for Lush.
And now this email is about the generalized findings of Drufo being carcinogenic, isn't that right?
I've never read this email, nor have I seen it before.
Right, but now that's your name at the top of the recipient list, isn't it, Mr. Doncourt?
Yes, my name is in the recipient list.
Along with 18 other names, isn't that right?
I don't know the exact number, but I will assume 18 is correct.
And now 17 of those people on that recipient list are not here in court today, correct?
I would disagree. Carson Durst is here in court.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, 19 names being on this list, Ms. Durst would make the 2 of the 19, so 17 people are not here today, correct?
My misunderstanding. I thought you said there was 18 names on the list.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, It is your testimony that this email was fabricated, correct?
This email is not in our email system, which we have turned over to you, and you have found no such email.
So it's your testimony that this email was fabricated, yes.
It's my testimony as well as you looking into my email system.
But now, Mr. Doncourt, the 17 other people on this list also work at Lush Fertilizer, isn't that right?
Yes, they do.
17 people who could not confirm that they never received this email, correct?
They are not here in court today.
But now there is one person on this list who is in court today, isn't that right?
Yes, Carson Durst is here in court.
Who took the stand under oath and testified that she received this email, correct?
That is correct.
Ms. Burnett, you may stop screen sharing. Thank you. Now, finally, Mr. Doncourt, let's move on to the issue of baking in today's case. Now, you testified that your company does not bake your fertilizers, correct?
That is correct. We do not bake our fertilizers.
But now you are to the understanding that if you were to bake your fertilizers, you could remove all risk of your product being carcinogenic. Isn't that right?
We can remove any risk of it being carcinogenic, which currently we have found no reason to believe it is.
Right, so now you've decided to not bake your fertilizer, correct?
Objection, Your
We
Honor.
decided that.
Asked and answered.
Response, Your Honor?
Very briefly, Ms. Angelo.
Your Honor, this question has not been asked, as the first question with regard to baking the fertilizer was confirming that Lush Fertilizer does not, and the second question following the baking was like Mr. Doncourt's decision to not bake the fertilizer.
I agree. I'll allow the question. You may proceed and answer the question, Mr. Doncourt.
I'll re-ask the question. Now, with this knowledge, you still elected to not bake your fertilizer, correct?
With the knowledge that we can remove any risk, which we have found none, neither did the EPA, we could remove the risk that does not exist by baking our fertilizer.
It'd be simply overkill, even.
Simply overkill to remove a risk that doesn't exist.
But now there was another reason you didn't bake your fertilizer, isn't that right?
We did not bake our fertilizer because we did not want to use we didn't want to continue with the expensive cost of baking a fertilizer to remove a risk that does not exist.
So in short, Mr. Doncourt, it was simply too expensive to bake your product.
It is too expensive for the risk that it does not alleviate, as there is no danger found.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. I heard a yes. And now, because by not baking your fertilizer, you can make a 6% yearly profit. Isn't that right?
We could make a profit off of it, yes.
And that money would then go off to pay those vulture capitalists. Isn't that right?
Well, like any company, extra money you make goes to the investors as well as yourself.
So now the vultures get paid at the expense of Dakota Weirs and others like her. Isn't that right?
Not true at all. Miss Dakota Weirs, although suffering from a terrible disease, it was not caused by Lush. So they do not gain money.
Mr. Doncourt, I understand the question you're trying to answer, but that is not the question I asked. The question I asked is, the money you made by not baking your product went to pay your investors and those vulture capitalists instead of being used to protect your consumers. Isn't that right?
Our consumers are protected as there is no risk in Drufo. But yes, the extra money does go to help our investors.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, you had a decision to make sure your product was 100% safe, and you decided against it, didn't you?
Our product has not been proved dangerous, so it is 100% safe.
But now it's true. You could have made it just that bit safer. Isn't that right?
We have seen no evidence proving that it's not safe, so it's hard to make it more safe than 100% safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any further redirect, Ms. Koster?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Koster. Thank you, Mr. Doncourt, for your testimony today. You may be excused. Unless there is any redirect or recross, Mr. Angelo.
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
the defense's next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Ms. Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Ms. Weirs, good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
You may proceed, Mr. Hines.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. Can you state your name, spelling last for the record?
Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
And Ms. Weirs, what is your current occupation?
I am an investigative journalist for the Rationalist magazine.
And what is your current occupation brought you to investigate?
I typically investigate topics like individual health and corporate policy.
Now, Ms. Weirs, these topics don't sound directly related to the case, so why is it important that you're here today?
I'm here today because I published an article about Drufo and its carcinogenic connection.
And how long did you spend researching and analyzing this topic?
I spent an entire year researching and studying the impacts of Drufo, but more specifically, its carcinogenic connection or lack thereof.
Ms. Weirs, what does this research entail?
It entailed that I personally go through publications of different agritech companies, which included Lush Fertilizer.
And are there any significant valid sources you use to get your information?
Yes, I used information from the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of States Department of Agriculture.
Your Honor, by Rule of Evidence 702, I believe that I've laid sufficient foundation that asserts that Skylar Weirs has specialized knowledge over the average juror through the excessive time and research completed on the on-balance impacts of agritech. The defense offers Skylar Weirs as an expert in agritech analysis.
Ms. Burnett, any objection to qualifying Ms. Weirs?
Your Honor, permission to conduct a brief voir dire.
Very brief.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to begin by asking you a little bit about your work. You spent only a year researching, correct?
Yes, I did spend a year researching Drufo and agritech.
And you spent only a year writing articles on research and agritech, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And Ms. Weirs, throughout this year, you also had a part-time job, isn't that right?
Yes, I'm self-sufficient, so I support myself.
And Ms. Weirs, have you ever been to college?
No, I have not.
Have you ever been to any vocational school to study agritech?
No, but I did do my research on it.
And you've never been formally trained in the field of agritech, have you?
No, I have not, but again, I did do my research on it.
However, you've never worked in the field of agritech, have you?
I can't work in the field of agritech. I'm allergic to grass.
However, you've not worked in the field of agritech, have you?
I already said I cannot.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, the witness does not have the necessary education, training, experience, knowledge, or skill to be considered an expert in this field. Alongside that, the pretrial motions declared that they could attempt to enter this witness as an expert in modern agritech and modern agritech only. So we would move to not enter the expert, and if she is entered, restrict it to only modern agritech.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, my witness does not need formal education in this case. However, she has done a year of research on this, and according to Rule of Evidence 702, my witness need only to know more than the average juror. And through her year of extensive research on this, she has that knowledge over the average juror, and we are offering her as an expert in modern agritech analysis, so therefore it would qualify under what she can be qualified under.
I'll admit the witness in a limited capacity as an expert to those fields in which she has done the research only. But Ms. Burnett, feel free to object to her expertise throughout the testimony if the witness strays from that limited acceptance as an expert.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may proceed, Mr. Highness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about agritech now. Ms. Weirs, what is agritech?
Agritech is the use of technology in agriculture, horticulture, and aquaculture.
And what type of companies of products did you research while investigating agritech?
I researched the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, but also a lot of other commercial agriculture companies.
And what did your research about Lush Fertilizer reveal?
It revealed that modern fertilizers, such as Lush, are a whole lot safer than some of the older products that are still in use today.
Ms. Weirs, more specifically, what did your research about the chemical compound Drufo reveal?
My research revealed that Drufo doesn't have the added pesticides that are found in other grass seed products that contain things like glyphosate and arsenic, which means that other fertilizers are more likely to cause cancer than Lush fertilizer is.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes, what's the objection?
Outside the scope of the witness's expertise.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
As my witness did extensive research on Drufo, as it is a product of Agritech, she can say what could have been caused by pesticides to the environment.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, you may, Ms. Burnett.
Your Honor, the witness has just described to us what agritech is, that being the study of technology regarding agriculture and horticulture. Therefore, the human anatomies associating chemicals to things like cancers would not be within her area of expertise, as she has been entered in agritech.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Very briefly, Mr. Highness.
As an expert in agritech, which is agriculture technology, she would know what agriculturally could happen from pesticides.
I'm going to allow limited testimony with regard to this issue, Mr. Highness. Please do not stray from that limited testimony regarding her research specifically.
Of course, Your Honor. Shall I repeat the question?
No, that's all right. My research revealed that Drufo doesn't have the added pesticides that are found in other grass seed products, like glyphosate and arsenic. So other fertilizers are more dangerous than Lush is.
And Ms. Weirs, what does this mean?
This means that Lush's development of Drufo actually protects its consumers from the elimination of exposure to other chemicals that are known to be carcinogenic.
And through your year of extensive focused research on Lush fertilizer and Drufo, what can you expertly claim?
I can claim that in comparison to other fertilizers, Lush is less likely to be carcinogenic.
And why is this important today?
My research revealed that any study claiming that Lush was carcinogenic was always inconclusive.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection, Ms. Burnett?
Again, Your Honor, the witness is straying into human anatomy and the relationship between a chemical and being carcinogenic. Therefore, she is outside the scope of her expertise.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
My witness, as an agritech analyst, is simply saying what her research revealed.
I'm going to sustain the objection with regard to any testimony Ms. Weirs might reveal in terms of the carcinogenic effects of any content of the Drufo product with regard to the effect as being carcinogenics and the effect on the body. So with that in mind, Mr. Highness, go ahead and ask your next question.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I'd like to talk about your personal connection to this case now. Ms. Weirs, how are you connected to the plaintiff?
The plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, is my twin sibling.
And what is your relationship like with the plaintiff?
Our relationship has been strained for several years, but even more so with the case.
And what is testifying here today against your sibling like?
I ultimately do love my sibling Dakota, and being here and testifying against my family.
What's the objection, Ms. Burnett?
Relevance, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This is directly related to the case, as not only in Dakota's direct, she talked about her relationship with her sister and how it is not the best, and how her relationship with the family is not the best. And my witness is simply following that same line of questioning.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
While I do believe that the relationship between this witness and the plaintiff is important, how the witness feels about the plaintiff is not necessarily relevant in this case, as it makes no fact more or less probable.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'm going to overrule the objection and allow Ms. Weirs to testify. This was an area that was explored by the plaintiff.
Yes,
Go
Your
ahead
Honor.
and answer the question, Ms. Weirs.
Again, I really do love my sibling Dakota, and testifying today is extremely difficult, but ultimately I believe that the truth at any cost needs to be heard. And even though my family is important to me, I'm not going to let the truth be left behind.
And what would your response be to someone who might call you resentful and spiteful in this case?
Again, I do really care about my family and Dakota, and I'm just here to bring truth and not to harm my family in any way.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any cross-examination, Ms. Burnett?
Yes, Your Honor, but before I proceed, may I request a brief time check?
Yes. Can the timekeeper reveal the time?
Your Honor, there are 11 minutes and 27 seconds remaining. My apologies.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Burnett.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to begin by talking to you a little bit about your relationship with the plaintiff. Dakota is your twin sister, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
But you two had never had the stereotypical close relationship, did you?
No, not really.
And are you aware of your sister's tragic diagnosis?
Of course I'm aware.
And just to clarify again, Ms. Weirs, you are here today testifying on behalf of the defense, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Let's move on, talk a little bit more about you personally. It's come to my attention that you've accumulated a bit of debt. Is this correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
What's the objection again? I did not hear. There's a lot of background noise and I'm not quite certain from where it's coming. So I am having some difficulty. Go ahead, Mr. Hines.
Beyond the scope of the direct.
Ms. Burnett?
Your Honor, Your Honor, my apologies. Cross-examination is not limited to the scope of direct examination.
I'm going to allow the question. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll re-ask the question. It's come to my attention that you've accumulated a bit of debt. Is this correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And most of this debt has been from a gambling habit you have?
Yes.
Relevancy?
What's the relevance of this, Ms. Burnett?
Your Honor, I am laying foundation in order to show a potential financial bias the witness may have in today's case.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
While my witness may have had a gambling problem, it is not relevant to the case because it would not impact her how she would come here financially, as all other witnesses here, most other witnesses here today are also here for money.
I am going to overrule that objection. You may proceed, but very briefly, Ms. Burnett, this is not an area that is extremely relevant to this matter.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Durst, was it your father's decision to stop paying for your gambling debt?
Weirs, and he, yes, did stop paying for my gambling to help my twin.
My apologies, Ms. Weirs. Let's move on and talk a little bit more about your focus in modern agri-tech. You recently researched modern agri-tech, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And through your research, you also researched other compounds such as synthetic nitrogen.
Yes.
And you researched the harmful effects nitrogen has on the environment around it, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And aren't you also aware that Lush fertilizer contains nitrogen?
Yes, Lush fertilizer does contain nitrogen, but Drufo, as the bonding agent, ensures that the nitrogen stays bonded to the plants that it is applicated onto so that it does not contaminate.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I heard a yes. Let's move on. You also heard through court today that your sister was exposed to many other kinds of many other fertilizers through her work, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Ms. Weirs, are you aware of the composition of these other fertilizers?
Yes, many of them contain very dangerous known carcinogens.
Ms. Weirs, are you testifying in court today that you know what other fertilizers your sister was exposed to?
No, I'm not aware what.
I'm sorry, you overlapped. Was there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I believe it was asked and answered. Ms. Burnett, please move on.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Ms. Weirs, if you know what other fertilizers your sister was exposed to, then you surely know everything about those other fertilizers, correct?
I do not know which other fertilizers she was exposed to specifically. I just know that Lush was definitely not the only one.
Okay, so, and so because you do not know what other fertilizers she was exposed to, you can't say exactly what chemicals she worked with, can you?
I know that most fertilizers contain harmful chemicals like the ones I mentioned before.
However, Ms. Weirs, you cannot say with any degree of certainty exactly what chemicals your sister was exposed to, can you?
No, I cannot.
However, you do know that she was regularly exposed to Drufo, correct?
She was regularly exposed to Drufo as well as other fertilizers and other chemicals.
But she was exposed to Drufo, yes?
Yes.
Asked and answered.
Please move on, Ms. Burnett.
Your Honor, that concludes my cross-examination. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Is there any redirect, Mr. Heinen?
Yes, Your Honor, very brief.
You may proceed.
Ms. Weirs, why is Drufo better than other fertilizers?
Drufo is better than other
Objection, Your Honor.
fertilizers.
What was the objection, Ms. Burnett?
Speculation, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This line of questioning was asked during the cross-examination, and as a researcher of agritech analysis, my witness would know from her research which fertilizers are better than others.
I'll allow the question. You may proceed.
Thank you.
So Drufo is better than other fertilizers because it needs to be applied much less. So any exposure to anything within Lush fertilizer means that it's going to be much less than other fertilizers.
And would there be less harmful effects from it?
Yes, significantly.
Thank you. And does your gambling affect any of your journalistic integrity?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross necessary, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Weirs, for your testimony. Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Thank you, Mr. Highness.
Thank you.
Any further witnesses at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams? Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Ms. Aberhout, you may go ahead and proceed.
Good morning, Dr. Williams. Please state your name, spelling the last for the record.
Devin Williams, Williams.
Where are you currently employed?
I work for Lush, a successful fertilizer company here in the US.
And how long have you worked there?
I started my career with Lush roughly a decade ago and have led the toxicology labs for 7 years now.
What are your responsibilities with Lush?
I originally was a technician, but now I lead the toxicology department of research, which places me in charge of large decisions regarding the safety of our chemicals.
Could you expand on that?
Sure. I work with different chemicals to understand their reactions given different environments as well as people.
What educational and professional qualifications do you have?
I have a PhD and have worked in other specialized programs before moving to Lush. My curriculum vitae covers this extensively.
Your Honor, I'm now going to refer the witness to what is previously marked as Exhibit 9. Let the record reflect that we're looking at what is previously marked as Exhibit 9.
Is somebody going to share Exhibit 9?
Yes. Permission from my co-counsel to screen share.
Absolutely. Please do.
Dr. Williams, do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
My curriculum vitae.
Is it true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about your previous education?
I got my PhD in pharmacology and toxicology, along with a master's degree in forensic toxicology from CSU. I also did a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
What professional background do you have?
I was employed at Colorado State University, CU Denver, the University of New Mexico, and the Larimore County office.
Your Honor, I believe that I've laid sufficient foundation and I move to have Exhibit 9 entered into evidence.
Any objections to the admission of Exhibit 9?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff objects on the grounds of hearsay as well as cumulative evidence.
Any response, Ms. Abraham?
Your Honor, this is a document that was written by my witness, and it is her qualifications, which she knows about extensively.
The Exhibit 9 will be accepted into evidence, as the witness has has validated it and laid a foundation. So it will be accepted over the defense's or the plaintiff's objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did you do at your previous employment?
I worked for CSU as an associate professor of toxicology. I've also worked as a tenured assistant professor of forensic toxicology at the University of New Mexico.
Where else have you been employed?
I was an assistant professor of toxicology and pathophysiology at CU Denver, and I worked with the Larimer County Office of the Chief Medical Examiner Toxicologist. I've also published many works.
Could you tell the jury a little bit more about your publications?
Sure. I was published as an author in The Forensic Aspects of Poisons, the alteration in prolactin secretion in female rats by some endocrine distributing chemicals, among other works.
Your Honor, I believe that I've laid sufficient evidence, and I move to have Dr. Williams entered as an expert witness in toxicology and pharmacology.
Ms. Palenko, any objections?
The plaintiff has no objection, Your Honor.
Dr. Williams will be so admitted as an expert.
Thank you. Let's focus on Drufo and its relationship to the fertilizer industry. Dr. Williams, what do fertilizers do?
They enhance plant growth in two main ways. They either add nutrients or enhance the effectiveness of the soil by modifying its water retention and aeration, affecting environmental balances.
What is the need for multi-nutrient fertilizers?
Well, they modify environmental balances, thus solving the eutrophication crisis.
And what is the eutrophication process?
Eutrophication is a buildup of excess nutrients in water due to agricultural runoff. It all stems from too much unused nitrogen, which accumulates in the water, creating a huge problem for the environment.
How did this create a problem for the environment?
This process destroys wildlife, reduces oxygen levels, and creates a home for harmful bacteria to thrive.
Why was Drufo created?
Well, the environmental issues that these older fertilizers caused sprung the search for a solution, and that's how Drufo began to be developed.
How does Drufo solve the environmental problems created by these fertilizers?
Unlike other fertilizers, Drufo binds to plants and soil, meaning less of the product needs to be used and less is washed away. This is significant because it greatly decreases nitrate production and runoff, therefore slowing down the eutrophication process.
I would now like to focus on the ban on Drufo in the EU. Are you aware of the ban on Drufo in the EU?
Yes, I am.
Why is Drufo banned in the EU?
Drufo is illegal for reasons completely unrelated to cancer risks. In fact, it was banned because of too much nitrogen in natural water, which is exactly what our product prevents. But it doesn't look that way in the lab.
And what is this ban based on?
It's based on
Objection or speculation, as well as lack of foundation.
Ms. Abraham, do you have a response?
As my witness is an expert in toxicology and pharmacology, she is an expert on Drufo and its causes. And because she worked with Lush and analyzed the EU ban, she has a full understanding of their decision.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, there has been no foundation laid as to how the witness would have knowledge of why the EU banned this product. Additionally, this would be speculative as this witness has provided no source of knowledge about why the EU has made any of its decisions.
Ms. Abraham, would you like to lay further foundation and explanation as to where Dr. Williams has obtained the information?
Yes. Dr. Williams, the ban on the EU, have you analyzed the ban on the EU?
Yes.
And why has the ban on the EU been looked at by Lush?
Because we thought about overturning it.
Are you aware of why the ban was created?
Because of too much buildup in the water.
Did Lush ever respond to the EU ban?
Not yet, because we were a young company with bigger priorities.
Are there any other bans on Drufo?
No.
Let's focus more on the plaintiff's claims that Drufo is carcinogenic. What do studies on Drufo and its relationship to cancer reveal?
Will you say that one more time?
I'm sorry. What do studies on Drufo and its relationship to cancer reveal?
Objection, Your Honor, vague.
Overruled. You may go ahead and answer the question.
The use of Drufo has not been correlated with a significant statistical increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma or any other cancer for that matter.
And how were the carcinogenic risks of Drufo discovered?
Well, we use statistics. When you take any large group of people who use any fertilizer, a small percentage of them will develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, regardless of whether or not the fertilizer contained Drufo.
And what did the statistics reveal about Drufo's likelihood of causing cancer?
The data we have analyzed consistently reveal that the users of Drufo-containing fertilizers do not have an elevated risk compared to users of other fertilizers.
Dr. Williams, why have you compared luscious fertilizers to other fertilizer?
You have to compare apples to apples to reach valid conclusions. Studies that compare vastly different scenarios to reach conclusions are often fundamentally flawed.
Are you aware of Dr. Rogers' study?
Yes, Rogers' study is a perfect example of comparing apples to oranges.
How so?
Rogers' study compared farm laborers, casual gardeners, and people who didn't do either of those things and their exposure to Drufo. Although farm laborers are exposed to vastly different products and conditions, making Dr. Rogers' study invalid.
Why are these variables problematic in research?
These variables are problematic because if someone who participated in Dr. Rogers' study contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it can't be traced back to the chemical Drufo.
What other important procedures are there in a successful and reliable study?
A study should be peer-reviewed and replicated. This has been adapted and accepted by the rest of the scientific community. Unsurprisingly, Dr. Rogers failed to have their study peer-reviewed and duplicated, making their study less reliable than a fifth grader science project.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Rolenko, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Before
Proceed
I begin,
with your
may I ask-
cross-examination.
Your Honor, before I proceed, may I ask for a time check?
Oh, absolutely. Timers?
Your Honor, there are 7 minutes and 54 seconds remaining.
Thank you. You may proceed with cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, I will begin by asking you some questions about how you analyze your data. Now, as a research analyst, basing your facts on numbers is incredibly important to reaching valid conclusions. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Yet you often make conclusions that are outside of your data sets, don't you?
Could you be a little more specific?
Certainly. You're often asked to postulate outside of your data sets. Isn't that right?
Say that one more time.
You're often asked to postulate outside of your data sets. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Meaning that you make assumptions.
Presumptions based on my knowledge.
All right, now let's move on to your time at Lush. You've worked at Lush since 2010, correct?
Correct.
And Lush is the defendant in today's case, aren't they?
Correct.
Meaning that you've worked at the defending company for over a decade, isn't that right?
I'm really here to defend science, not a company.
That wasn't my question. My question was, you've worked for the defending company for over a decade, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And thus, you yourself admit to having a financial bias in this case, don't you?
Nothing compared to Dr. Rogers.
That wasn't my question. You admit to having a financial bias in this case, don't you?
Yes, though you could argue that for every witness.
I heard a yes. Now, let's move on to your claims about Drufo. You've stated that there have been no valid studies that have found any correlation between Drufo and cancer. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
You were here in court today to listen to Ms. Durst's testimony, weren't you?
Say that one more time.
You heard Ms. Durst's testimony in court earlier today, didn't you?
Correct.
So you're aware of the European Foundation study of Drufo?
Correct.
And you're aware that the study concluded that there is an exponentially higher risk to adolescents through exposure to Drufo?
I'm also aware that their study was conducted in a petri dish, which is also known as a model study and aren't exactly reliable.
Yet you're aware that this was a published and valid work, isn't that right?
I don't personally consider it valid.
You don't consider the European Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Science a valid publication?
I don't believe that their study claiming that Drufo is carcinogenic is valid.
Yet you're aware that the study is published and peer-reviewed, isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now let's move on to your studies on Drufo. These studies have all been conducted in-house, isn't that right?
Correct.
These studies have never been published?
No.
They have never been peer-reviewed?
What's that?
These studies have never been peer-reviewed?
No.
And you have yourself stated that in order for a study to be valid, they must be published and peer-reviewed, have you not?
I apologize. My studies done with Lush, it was a large group effort and was peer-reviewed by team members.
Yet it wasn't peer-reviewed outside of members of Lush, isn't that right?
It has not been published yet.
So None of these studies that you are talking about today have been peer-reviewed or published, yet you claim that that is essential to having valid studies.
Will you say that one more time?
None of the studies that you are talking about in court today have been published or peer-reviewed, and yet you yourself claim that this is important to having these valid studies. Isn't that right?
Though our studies haven't been published, they are not fundamentally flawed like Dr. Rogers.
I wasn't asking you about Dr. Rogers' study. Your studies are not published.
Correct.
All right. Now, additionally, everybody on your team that is vetting these studies are the people that are profiting off of and producing Lush. Isn't that right?
I'm so sorry. My computer is being weird. Will you say that again?
All of the people that are vetting your studies within Lush are the ones that are producing it and profiting off of it. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
No further questions this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Verlinko. Any redirect, Ms. Abraham?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief redirect.
Yes.
Dr. Williams, you mentioned that the study done by the EU was considered invalid. Do you know why this is?
It was done in a petri dish, and that doesn't reflect how Drufo interacts with the real world.
And once again, what was the EU's ban based on?
Laboratory results.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross in light of those questions, Ms. Verlinko?
No recross necessary, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Verlinko. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for your testimony today. Thank you, Ms. Abraham. Does this conclude the defense's case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
I am going to give the parties a minute so that you can gather yourselves and we can start with closing remarks. Are the parties ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed with closing argument.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I like both of you to remain on video while the closing remarks are being concluded. So, Ms. Mastrangelo, go ahead and please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court.
You may proceed.
They kept it to themselves to keep it on the market. Your Honor, members of the jury, Ms. Weir's life is destroyed because Lush Fertilizer was negligent. Negligent to properly warn their consumers, negligent to the dangerous effects of the chemical in their product, and negligent to remove the unreasonable risk of Drufo. Lush Fertilizer should have taken reasonable care to protect their consumers, but decided against it since it was simply too expensive to ensure their consumers' safety. Let me remind you that the burden of proof in today's case is the preponderance of the evidence, which is simply more likely than not. Lush Fertilizer tried to tell you they followed every rule and precaution, but we've shown by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer fell woefully short. Our witnesses proved this negligence. You heard from our expert witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, who testified to the causal link between Drufo and not just cancer, but Ms. Weir's specific cancer, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Dr. Casey Rogers testified that the dangerous effects of Drufo are amplified with adolescence, which is exactly Ms. Weir's circumstance. And Dr. Rogers gave her expert opinion that Ms. Weir was 10 times more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma due to her exposure to Drufo. In contrast, the defense brought Skylar Weirs to the stand to tell you that Drufo is safe. Ms. Weirs has no education, no training, and no knowledge of Drufo except for limited research. So why was she on the stand? It's simple. The defense couldn't get anyone else. The defense couldn't get anyone else to tell you that Drufo is safe because Drufo isn't safe. You also heard from Ms. Carson Durst, who brought it all together for you. Ms. Durst testified to Lush's negligence and the causal link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Ms. Durst testified that Lush knew, ignored, and concealed the carcinogenic properties of Drufo. Lush was made aware of these dangers multiple times, but neglected to do anything about it. Mr. Doncourt also testified to Lush's negligence. You heard Mr. Doncourt admit to not baking Lush's fertilizer to squeeze Lush's margins for an extra 2% yearly profit. And Drufo isn't safe because of it. Mr. Doncourt tried to tell you that Drufo is safe enough, but failed to bring any studies today to prove it, because Drufo isn't safe. The defense also brought Dr. Devin Williams to the stand, who is on the product development team at Lush and has a major financial bias in this case. Dr. Williams told you all about the studies that Lush conducted, but are any of them in trial here today? No, because Drufo isn't safe. You also heard from Ms. Dakota Weirs, who told you how her perfect life became a catastrophe due to her cancer. Ms. Weirs told you everything her cancer has taken from her and everything it will continue to take. Ms. Weirs told you she's terrified for the future, and she doesn't even know if she has one. The members of the jury, there's no comparative fault in today's case. Lush's fertilizer label only warned of mild eye irritation, not non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Ms. Weirs cannot be at fault for something that the defense willfully omitted and concealed from their safety label. Lush Fertilizer kept the knowledge that Drufo is carcinogenic to themselves to keep it on the market. Lush Fertilizer had to take one step to bake their product. One step to ensure their consumer safety, but instead chose to pad their pockets. Members of the jury, because Lush Fertilizer's negligence has completely destroyed Ms. Dakota Weir's life, we ask that you find Lush Fertilizer liable for their negligence and for the monetary compensation of $5.2 million for Ms. Dakota Weirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. Mr. Heinitz, do you have a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, esteemed judge, opposing counsel, we are here today to establish justice for Dakota Weirs. I would also like to remind you that the plaintiff has the burden of proof in this case. My co-counsel and I proved that Lush Fertilizer is not liable for Dakota's tragic disease. This trial will either restore the good name of Lush Fertilizer or destroy a company who is simply trying to make the world a safer place. The opposing counsel's witness statements consisted of an attempt to manipulate Dakota Weirs. Carson Durst proved her biased opinion in her statement. Her initial success came from her relationship with the Doncourts. Carson had an advantage in getting her job at Lush because of her relationship with the Doncourts. Once fired, her frustration led her to not only break her non-compete agreement, but also to pursue a vendetta against Mr. Doncourt and his company while working for their competitors, Terra Greenery, If she can't even be honest with something legally binding, how can her statement be trusted today? In Dr. Rogers' study, she tested farmers, yes. However, in her testimony today, she stated that she did not directly monitor them over time. Farmers are exposed to many fertilizers, not just Drufo. Her study was also never replicated. Therefore, Dr. Rogers can make no legitimate conclusion because she did not test the effects of Drufo alone, and her study was never replicated. Now, the first witness today was the plaintiff herself, Dakota Weirs. She testified about how her childhood was influenced by playing piano and volunteering in the society. The plaintiff's attorneys focused on the effects of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma on Dakota's life, which truly is a sad story. However, Dakota worked with many fertilizers, not only Lush's brand. Any one of these could have caused Dakota to get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota may have worked with Lush fertilizer and Drufo, but she worked without the proper safety precautions. Unfortunately, her actions and her own negligence are what caused her disease. You also heard from the defense today, and we established that Lush Fertilizer has no liability through our witnesses. Blake Doncourt is simply a hardworking, moral businessman. He built Lush Fertilizer from the ground up and spent time making it environment friendly. He made sure that they tested Drufo before they started using it. His company took all the necessary precautions so that this would not happen. With all of the hard work he put into his company, ask yourselves, why now would he do something to put his company in jeopardy? Now, Dr. Devin Williams proved that Drufo is a revolutionary component in agritech. As a toxicologist, Dr. Williams is in charge of making sure Lush fertilizer products are safe. Through intense research and testing, she reinforced the fact that Drufo is not dangerous to humans because it is applied less. Now, Skylar Weirs did the hardest thing for a person to do. She testified against her sister. She also proved she was qualified for this case by explaining her background on agritech and by staying up to date with events in agritech. Nothing could be harder than testifying against someone you know and love dearly. Skylar made this hard decision to show how much she cares about justice and how unbiased her opinions truly are, not for financial reasons. Opposing counsel claims that Lush fertilizer caused Dakota's disease. For a moment, let's pretend they were correct. Dr. Rogers talked about Dakota Weirs using Lush in an adolescent age of 14 to 18. Lush packaging specifically said, keep out of reach of children. Dakota Weirs still used it. Her own negligence, even reading the packaging as a child, are what caused her disease. Now, Lush fertilizer did not cause Dakota's cancer. And opposing counsel also tries to say that Lush should be blamed because they didn't bake it. Doncourt said there was no need to bake it. If there wasn't any need to spend extra money, why would they do it? Throughout this case, the defense proved time and again that there's no possible way Dakota could have gotten cancer by working with Drufo safety. I wish I could say the opposing counsel cares about Dakota's well-being, but they don't. The only thing stolen in this case is time from Dakota, who could be figuring out how to get around her illness as we speak. To them, Dakota is simply a puppet to make money, and her strings are being pulled. The most important question we have to ask ourselves is, why are we gathered here today? We are here today to stop the puppeteering dominance over people with illnesses. Dakota Weirs is more than someone who got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs represents all those who have been taken advantage of to make money. Ladies and gentlemen, although we are here opposing the plaintiff, we are here today to establish justice for Ms. Weirs. However, Lush Fertilizer is not at fault. Blaming this company does not achieve true justice. My co-counsel and I truly wish the best for Dakota, but the best is to get around her disease, not worry about money. The plaintiff had the burden of proof in this case, and none of what the opposing witnesses brought up proves Drufo caused Dakota's cancer.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Do you have any rebuttal, Ms. Mastrangelo?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed. Could
Your
I
Honor,
have a time remaining?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just about to ask.
Your Honor, there are 45 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
May
You
it
may
please the
proceed,
court? Oh, yes, Your Honor. The defense is absolutely right, members of the jury. This is a case of classless manipulation. The defense is trying to manipulate the facts that Dakota Weirs, a legally employed employee of Haven Landscaping, was at fault for not following a dress code that wasn't enforced. The defense tried to tell you that Dr. Rogers' studies are not valid because they weren't replicated. But the defense's studies weren't replicated either, just another manipulation of the facts. Find Lush Fertilizer liable for negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrangelo. I'd like to see everyone on the screen, please. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I would like to congratulate everybody on your performances. We are going to wait for a few minutes until Mr. Pereira, Ms. Johnson, and Ms. Storm complete their tallies. And I'd like them to let me know when they have completed those tallies.
So, Your Honor, may I step out to go get the scoring sheet so that I make sure, because I think
it's electronic.
Yeah,
okay.
Tennille, I will send you the link in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
Quick question. I want to clarify because I wanted to be able to give everyone feedback. So I wrote the participant names instead of the character names. Can somebody remind me who Chloe played?
Your Honor, I played, I'm sorry, it's a habit. I played Dakota Weirs.
Dakota. And then what about Mina?
I play Dr. Casey Rogers.
Casey. And then Rima.
Yes, I played Carson Durst.
Okay.
And Ms. Johnson, did you put in your scores and submit them?
No, I'm finishing that up, but it's asking me what the character names were. But because I wrote the attorney names, I've got to just match them up so I can put them in the right spots. That's all.
Okay.
Okay. I'll be right. Almost done. Who did Isabella play?
I played Skylar Weirs.
And then finally, Mara.
I played Devin Williams.
Okay, thank you. I'm almost done, guys. Sorry.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Ms. Storm and Mr. Pereira, have you already submitted your score sheets?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd like to commend everybody for really great presentations. Both the plaintiff and defense gave stellar presentations. You were all very poised and focused. You were very direct and specific about the questioning. You didn't go over things, you know, to the extent I frequently see attorneys in real trial situations do. So I really appreciated that. Really very great presentations. I do want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a judge, an administrative law judge, actually, with the Office of Administrative Courts. And I've been involved in the mock trial program since 1994. So probably longer than all of you have been alive. I think it's a terrific program. It's just, I think this program has done for you what it was intended, which was allow you to develop analytical skills, be quick on your feet, respond quickly to the questions and answer, and you clearly know the material very well. So I just want to commend you for that, and thank you for giving such a great presentations. But this isn't about me, so I'm going to allow the scoring panelists who are the true arbiters of your performances. So Ms. Storm, would you like to get us started with commentaries?
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Dina Stamm, and I've not been involved in mock trial for as long as our esteemed judge has, but it's been pretty close. I started in 1997, so she's got me by a couple of years, but we do, if you just go by our longevity, you have to understand we do this because we love it. We do this because we love seeing you come out and give your best and succeed. And it's you guys doing your best is not necessarily based on, you know, however many flubs you had. It's about your ability to recover. It's about, as Judge said, your ability to think on the fly and deliver those responses to both teams, and very, very, very specifically your coaches. Bless you for taking the time to hammer evidence, especially hearsay. Right this second, where did that go? Yes, Ms. Olga and Ms. Cecina, that discussion against Dr. Rogers, Ms. Odell as witness, hammering hearsay and proffering that evidentiary rule. No, this was a statement made in court. I have yet to see a barred attorney actually pull that out. I have never seen in my entire career an attorney actually say, no, that statement was made in court, therefore it is admissible, right? They, for whatever reason, they tend to forget it, or it just, you know, simply doesn't occur to them, which I think is odd, but very nicely done on that. There were four, what am I going on here? For the plaintiffs, your coaches, again, just massive kudos there. And I kept hearing your attorneys there saying, thank you, I heard a yes. Point, big point, big point, big point. Thank you, I heard a yes. And also, I understand the question that you were trying to answer, but that is not the question that I asked. You are still polite, you are still firm, and you are still hounding in the point that you are trying to make. So very nice job controlling the witnesses. For all of these witnesses, holy mackerel. Pay your coaches more. Make them a batch of cookies or something. But you witnesses, it has been a very long time since I have seen this level of performance. I am not going to give much more specific feedback on this, but I will say, oh, here we go. Here's my last point. And this is really, okay, 2 points. This is really odd because normally I tend to focus more on witnesses because I feel that they're the unsung heroes. But in this particular instance, I think the attorneys really did a much more phenomenal job than what I'm accustomed to seeing, even at this level. Where'd she go? Peyton, your cross-examination, that was an absolutely excellent voir dire. Absolutely excellent. If I take the time to write it down, and I do, that means that you have made that point stand out that much more. For the closing argument, Ms. Lilly, 2 things. First and foremost, it's the first time in mock trial that, well, first time in a long time that we've actually had civil litigation up at the forefront, especially where it pertains to personal injury claim. And so nice job calling out the ask on the dollar amount. That is stunningly enough something that I actually saw a licensed attorney forget to do in closing. And also, you took opposing counsel's statement, or I guess I should say the opposing team's statement of classless manipulation, and you took it and you turned it on its ear. You stole it from them. Nice play. Very nice play. That having been said, Mr. Haynes, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Highness.
Your Highness, thank you. Your delivery, spot on. Absolutely spot on. Very nicely done. Again, all of you, pay your coaches more. Thank your back support team for us, because obviously you wouldn't have made it this far without their support. But just overall, fantastically done. Massive kudos to all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Storm. I would echo all your sentiments as well. Mr. Pereira, do you have any comments? And I would ask that you keep them, 3 minutes or less as well, because they need to go and have some lunch before they start the next round.
Sure, I'll try being great. Thank you. My name's Anthony Pereira. I work with Metro Volunteer Lawyers. It's the pro bono arm of the Denver Bar Association. I'm an attorney for them. I echo what Ms. Tom was saying about the great performances. I thought I was really impressed, particularly with the good objections and responding to the objections. A lot of times when someone objects, you get flustered and don't know how to respond, but you guys were ready with a response, and you guys were objecting appropriately as well. Good job coming up with theories with regards to the case too, because it's the same facts. I've scored a few of these. It's always interesting to hear new theories. I particularly liked one as far as like the other products have warnings on them, but you still use those and you still didn't wear your protective gear or things like that. I also liked you trying to break down the science a little bit for jurors, for people, as opposed to just saying Jufo causes cancer, but like explaining a little bit more to that, break it down. Witnesses did a very good job, especially knowing someone else's story, and there wasn't hesitation in responding when asked questions that were outside the scope a little bit, or there wasn't hesitation when asking and adjusting your answer to what the question was. And then good job controlling those witnesses when they did such a thing. So it was kind of what goes on in real life too. So I think that was very good. Good job trying to limit the scope of the expert testimony to the particular things that they're qualified for, as opposed to just let them testify. I think that was very, very good job. Closing statements were really good. Opening statements were very good. Closing arguments were very good. Burden of proof. I heard you guys mention that a few times. Be sure that the other side has it. Put it on them and don't let them run away from it. And then if you don't have the burden of proof, don't add it on and say, we will prove this or we will do that. But good job on putting on it and highlighting who has the burden and what that burden is. Yeah, I hope that was under 3 minutes, Judge.
I appreciate it, Mr. Pineda. Great comments. Ms. Johnson, do you have any comments for the teams?
I do, and I will try to be brief. So my name is Tennille. I am not actually a practicing attorney, nor have I practiced in Colorado. I am licensed in the state of Texas. It's been about 9 years, I think, since I practiced, and it's been about 10 or 11 years since I participated in mock trial myself. And so I apologize for taking so long scoring. One of the things I wanted to do was highlight things that I think might be beneficial to you in the real world, should you continue to desire to practice in the real world. This is not just a competition. I think this is a wonderful program that helps develop our young attorney professionals. And so I wanted to make sure I gave some really good thought to what I was seeing. And I echo a lot of the sentiment that was provided already. I think that you guys are doing an outstanding job. Everyone was professional. I could tell where everyone was going with the responses that were provided. I do want to just highlight a few pieces of specific feedback. I won't take too long. Peyton, and I think also Lily did a phenomenal job at tone changes as well as intentional hand movements. I think that that is very, very effective, especially when you are trying to emphasize a specific point. So I really loved that. Peyton, in your opening, there was just a little bit too much shifting, moving around. And so while I loved your tone change and your hand movements, I think if you try to be a little bit more stable and maybe intentional with your body movement, I think that that would be more effective for you. Let me see. People did a nice job with objections, I think, generally speaking. Let me see, Zachary, I think you did a great job responding to objections. I would say you might be able to stand a little bit more familiarity with the various components of hearsay. So there's the definition of hearsay, then there's the exemptions, and then there are the exceptions. And I think if you maybe hone in on the distinctions between those three areas, I think your arguments could stand to be a little bit stronger. But nice job throughout your directs and your crosses. Cecina, I think that I would love to see more confidence from you. It seemed like you might have been a little bit nervous. So while I liked your content and your delivery, I would just encourage you to exhibit and really feel confident in your mind so that it comes across on the screen and to your audience. Let me see, I'm going to be quick, so let me just call out a couple of additional things. Zachary, I loved how in your closing you did reinforce who has the burden. I felt that later in your closing, you did mention, though, that the defense proved, which kind of is counter to the plaintiff having the burden. So just be careful on that. I think you were going for the right content, but just focus on making sure that you kind of feed that through your entire closing. Let me see. I think that is like the main feedback that I had. A couple of the witnesses at times were a little soft-spoken and speaking a little quickly. I wrote that down specifically for, actually for Josie, and I remember that being for Maura as well. So I had a hard time hearing some of the testimony because of such soft-spokenness, as well as a little bit quick on the tongue. But those were the main specific feedback that I had. And again, I really think you guys did a wonderful job. This is just feedback to help you grow even more.
Well, thank you, Ms. Johnson. And again, thank you, all of you. But more than anything else, I hope that you give a great applause to the Colorado Bar Association and the people that really organize this and put all the hard work to give you the opportunity to grow and develop as young adults, going from here forward. So thank you all, and good luck on your next trial.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, members of the
Your
jury,
Honor.
for your time and attention.
Thank you.
You are
Your
so
Honor.
welcome. You
Thank
are
you.
so welcome. Bye-bye.